What's up, guys? I have an incredible panel with me here today because we're about to break down the 21 Easter eggs that you need to know about in Rogue One, a Star Wars story. First up, we have the author of 100 Things Star Wars Fans Should Know and Do Before They Die, Mr. Dan Casey.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, thanks for being here. And then we have Adam HLAVAC, who is the literal king of superhero news and also of all things graphic here at Screen Junkies.
And extremely underdressed or appropriately dressed. I can't figure it out.
Perfectly appropriate. Well, gentlemen, let's get right into this list because we got a lot to break down. Number one, blue milk.
Is there any other kind of milk?
No kind is delicious.
If you don't drink this on May the 4th, then you're a fool.
Exactly. This is the St. Patrick's Day milk. I guess I already messed up this intro, but honestly, it's a fun little nod. This is like one of the tiniest things, but you see it right at the beginning of the movie when Lyra and Galen Erso's home, when they're sort of running away. You see a pitcher of blue milk on the counter, and it looks delicious, but I'm a little concerned that it's not refrigerated.
That's true. And obviously, this was made famous in episode 4, Aunt Beru, blue milk during the dinner scene. That's like where that thing originated from, and it's just carried on over.
Number two, Ponda Baba and Dr. EVAZAN.
You call him Ponda Baba, I call him Walrus Face. Because that was inexplicably his name for a very long time. Yeah, on Jeddah, which is sort of like, almost like the Mecca for people that are really into the Force.
Like a Force sanctuary
I'm
of
not
sorts.
like, I don't follow the Force, I'm just spiritual. That's where you go. You go to Jeddah.
Totally.
You go there for the hummus, but then you stay for all the Force relics. Yeah, you see these two very familiar faces from episode 4. You might remember from the cantina scene.
He doesn't like you. I don't like you either. You just watch yourself.
Exactly. Those dudes make an appearance, and they still, look, they're already surly, and they just get meaner in the time that follows.
Number three, C-3PO and R2-D2, my dear, dear homie.
It's not a Star Wars movie without those two.
Exactly. Anthony Daniels set the record, most Star Wars movies. He's in all of them.
Yeah.
As 3PO.
And it's a nice little homage because we see them on Yavin right before the Rogue Squadron kind of goes off on their mission, and it's great. It's just a beautiful little touch that kind of just makes you. It's just a reminder that this is Star Wars.
It's one of the right ways to do fan service. It's super brief. You just have 3PO like, oh my, where are they going?
That was good.
Thank you. I'm coming for you, Daniels.
Number four, the ghost.
Who are you gonna call? The people from Rebels.
Yeah, and I mean, this is a little more of like, you have to actually be kind of following the lore of Star Wars Rebels, an animated series that's been going on for 3 seasons now. It's on Disney XD. And this is the ship that whole team is kind of, it's the ship that transports them wherever they go. So you have to kind of watch a little closely for this Easter egg. I almost missed it, but if you follow the show, it's a beautiful, just like a little nod to the show.
And it pops up briefly in 2 spots in the movie. You'll notice it the first time on Yavin 4. You can spot it on the ground in the upper left-hand quadrant of the screen. And once again, it's in the battle on Scarif in the final third of the film.
Number 5, General SYNDULLA.
General SYNDULLA. It wouldn't be a Rebels reference without the General's name getting dropped. You don't actually see General SYNDULLA in this movie. Rather, you hear about our good General.
And I think this possibly could be a little bit, because, you know, now all these movies are canon. So to have a reference to General SYNDULLA, are they kind of leaving it open that this character survives Rebels and moves on to other movies? Is that going to influence what that character's fate will be in that show? Or are fans just going to have to accept that it's just an Easter egg for people who watch?
I do think it's one of those just like, yeah, this will be fun for people at home.
Exactly.
Yeah, and you hear General SYNDULLA's name over the loudspeaker right after Jyn gets back from seeing her daddy.
Number 6, Chopper.
Look, I will say it, K2SO, far and away for me, stole this movie. My favorite character, sassiest droid of all time, but before him, there was Chopper.
I think Chopper might edge out K2SO a little bit more, but again, yeah, another great reference to Rebels. I think he is definitely one of the strongest characters on that show, and he's a droid. It just goes to show how powerful these characters can be, even though they're not human characters. You know, they're machines, they're robots, but they put so much heart and love into these characters.
Exactly, and you'll notice Chopper, if you're paying attention, when the communications officer goes to see Mon Mothma, who's back, baby. I don't know what immortality pact she made, like Blood of the Young. She must have a terrifying Dorian Gray portrait. I know it's a different actress, but it looks exactly the same. But you can spot her. Communications officer goes to deliver news about the battle on Scarif to Mon Mothma. That's when you can spot Chopper, upper left corner. It's a great corner to put Easter eggs.
Number 7, Obi-Wan Kenobi.
This tingles me in the jingles so well. I love Obi-Wan Kenobi. Like, to me, he was the best part of the prequels, and every time he gets sprinkled throughout the Star Wars universe in some way, I'm still hoping that if we don't get a movie, we get a Netflix series that kind of bridges the gap.
Obi-Wan, single and loving it. My 19 years in the desert. You don't actually see Obi-Wan in this
Right,
movie as much as I
just
would have
referenced.
loved, like Ewan McGregor to just come in and do like a Moulin Rouge style musical number. No, you get to hear Jimmy Smits, who appears again as Bail Organa, talk about his Jedi friend, which there aren't many Jedis left, so, you know, he's the one who's sort of keeping an eye on the wee baby Luke.
Number 8, Captain Antilles.
You get to see him as part of the Alderaanian fleet. Captain Ray Antilles, Ramus, if we are giving him his full due. He appears in the movie, and yeah, it wouldn't be a Star Wars without Antilles.
Yeah, it's just about, again, bridging these movies together and creating kind of like that, closing that gap a little bit between this movie and 4, which I think it does really well.
Number 9, Tantive 4.
Yes, Tantive 4, or Tantive, as I like to call it, because it makes me, Tantive 4 to me sounds like a cool shampoo. Maybe it's what Chewbacca uses to keep his hair so lustrous. Contains conditioner and plans for the Death Star. I guarantee people will cheer when they see this, because this is the ship. A New Hope opens on this ship. That's where Leia is, that's where stuff goes down, and we see where it took off from. We get a very strong connection to A New Hope in the final sort of moments of this movie as the Tantive 4 comes into play.
Yeah, and we see ships of similar models throughout the battle over Scarif, but once you see this ship, you know exactly what it is and where it's going, and it's amazing.
Number 10, Mustafar.
Ah, Mustafar, a beautiful place. Yeah, look, a trip there's going to cost you an arm and a leg, but I say it's worth it.
Maybe even 2.
Exactly. God, Obi-Wan, what a jerk.
Higher
Left
ground,
his buddy.
man.
He's like, hey, you're crippled. I'll just leave you to burn to death. Obi-Wan, baby. It's really cool. You see this sort of Imperial installation there where Darth Vader is chill. If you're wondering what he did in his spare time, he is like at the he's at like the Sith goth spa on Mustafar, chilling in a Bacta tank, or a Bacta tank, excuse me, sort of trying to rejuvenate his horrifyingly burned body. And yeah, that's a really cool scene. And there's something else in there that maybe we were talking about. Might be something.
The guard that comes in to basically tell Vader that Krennic has arrived to speak to him. We were kind of speculating, like, who could this character be? Perhaps Snoke?
Yeah, the wee baby Snoke.
Maybe a wee baby Snoke. A lot of interesting stuff. And the interesting part also is it's the one planet that we visit in the movie that doesn't actually get a lower third label as to what it is.
Yeah,
so they kind of assume that we know what it is.
Exactly. It's sort of unmistakably Mustafar, because if there's one thing I know about Star Wars, it's that planets only have one kind of weather over the entire surface of the planet. And it's impossible for me to believe there's more than one volcano planet, considering there's only one of every other type.
Number 11, the Whills.
Ooh. The Journal of the Whills. This is maybe one of the deepest cuts in the entire movie. They talk about how Chirrut Imwe and Baze Malbus are the guardians of the Whills on Jedha. Now, the Whills is actually a reference to the Journal of the Whills, which was related to the Force. It's a book about the Jedi, and it's something that's been part of Star Wars lore since some of the earliest drafts of the movie.
Yeah, it was basically like their handbook, the Bible of like the Force and the Jedi and stuff. So this is from such early drafts that this whole concept was kind of abandoned, but it's really cool to see that they're using still things that predate even the original Star Wars movie, the scripts from the early 70s, and putting that into this movie and potentially movies going into the future. And even Chirrut Imwe, when he makes references or he says to people on the streets on Jedha, he says, "May the force of others be with you," which is the original term that they used in some of the earlier scripts of the Star Wars. So that was pretty cool.
Number 12, I have a bad feeling.
About this? I would say that right up there with May the Force be with you is I have a bad feeling about this.
I got a bad feeling about this.
I've got a bad feeling about this.
I got a bad feeling about this.
This is a line that is in pretty much every Star Wars movie. It's one of the running gags that they put in there. And you get most of it out there. K2SO almost gets it out. It reminds me a lot of at the end of Age of Ultron, where Cap has assembled the new Avengers, and he says, "Avengers up!" And then they just cut it. It's that sort of thing where it's like, you guys know what this is. We're not gonna do it. You know what it is.
Well, it's ironic that happens in this movie where it gets cut off because, you know, of how things sort of unfold. You know, it just builds in more into that movie.
Yeah, if anything you should have a bad feeling about is this like mission that you're on,
about to happen,
going deep into enemy territory.
Number 13, the Wilhelm scream.
The Wilhelm scream is, honestly, it didn't really become a like audio visual meme until Star Wars. Sound designer Ben Burt put this in there. He took it from a movie. It first appeared in 1951's Distant Drums, but was popularized by Ben Burt. Supposedly, it was said they had the scream inserted into this movie called The Charge at Feather River. This actor named Sheb Woolley played a character named Private Wilhelm, and when he died, they had this ridiculous scream they had in their library. Now, this was the first time they took that sound and he just put it in there, and other sound designers like thought it was so funny, they kept sticking it into other movies. So it became sort of this in-joke amongst sound designers, but particularly with Star Wars. And there's dozens of movies where you can hear this. I said this on Movie Fights recently. It's the Harambe of sounds. It will not die.
Oh.
Yeah.
Number 14, YAVIN 4 recon towers.
Well, this is cool because, again, I mean, just the idea that we go back to Yavin, we get to see these recon towers, and really all it is just we just have these rebel guards who are always just keeping track of what's coming on planet, off planet. So it's a beautiful just nod to Episode 4, because that's how we first see Millennium Falcon and the X-Wing fighters coming onto the planet. Again, just another nod to the original trilogy.
It also seems like the worst job to have.
It does.
In the
You're such
entire
an easy
rebellion.
target.
You're like, well, I'm just sitting up here, hope no ships or snipers come by.
Where's my sandwich?
Well, there's a ship. I can't do anything about it because, hey, I don't have a telephone up here.
Number 15, General DODONNA.
He's another throwback to Episode 4 alongside Mon Mothma. He's one of the leaders of the rebellion. We sort of meet him during the Death Star attack briefing in Episode 4, and he's back there in Rogue One when Jin's presenting her information to the rest of the rebel leaders. So it's just another nice piece of connective tissue that ties Rogue One to Episode 4.
Because this movie, a lot of people have been saying this is movie 3.5. It's more like 3.85, 3.9.
Yeah.
Like, it's that close. So it makes total sense to have some of these characters appear again.
Number 16, Galen Ursa looks at the horizon.
I've looked at good horizons too.
Hey, that's a great horizon. That area they shot in Iceland is breathtaking.
Yeah.
It's an interesting, I guess, throwback to Episode 4 in a way, which sort of opens, you see Luke looking at the twin sons of Tatooine while John Williams has this music that's very hopeful score swelling in the background. It's a very iconic scene, one that has inspired many a desktop wallpaper. But this one, like, it's the opposite. You have Mads Mikkelsen coming out of the bunker he's been hiding in, essentially, and just looking at the horizon with utter dread as Krennic and his troopers land. They finally found him. He thought he got out. They're trying to drag him back in. And there's almost like a Kurosawa quality to this movie. It felt very Seven Samurai, where you have Krennic and his just like squad of armed goons coming in to muscle out these farmers, essentially. That's what he's been doing. So it's a really iconic shot, and in a way, sort of an interesting parallel when you pair it with the shot of Luke from Episode 4.
Two completely different feelings, one of hope and one sort of despair, and I think that's what makes it so good.
What's also interesting too is Tatooine is all desert, but where they are, it was so lush and green and beautiful.
And here's a fun fact. I spoke with Gareth Edwards recently at a sort of cocktail hour before a press day, which didn't mean to drop a name there. I sound like a real jerk right now. I was very excited to talk to him because all the locations of this movie look so amazing. And he was telling me about that one in particular. They found it on the last day before they were going to shoot. They were just doing a random last-minute location scout, flying around in a helicopter in Iceland, which sounds amazing. And they spotted this just patch of green, this grass that stretched on for like 10 miles into the horizon, just surrounded by volcanic ash. And it's actually planted there to keep volcanic ash from spilling onto the highway in Iceland. And it was too lush, so they actually had to CGI out a lot of the grass because it looked fake. It just looked like there was too much.
That was awesome. Good job, Gareth Edwards. Number 17, Stormtrooper equipment.
This is interesting. What do stormtroopers actually do in their downtime? We hear stormtroopers when we're on Scarif sort of talking about their new gear. I guess it makes sense if your whole life is just like wearing these horrifying like white buckets and just holding weapons that you'd probably be super into them like, oh, wow, this one actually has a safety. That's a first.
Yeah. Well, and again, another throwback to Episode 4, we have Obi-Wan on the bridge trying to disarm the shield on the Death Star, and the two troopers at the end of the catwalk were going, you know what's going on? Maybe it's another drill.
You seen that new BT-16? Yeah, some other guys were telling me about it. They say
It's just more of that sort of banter and talking about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's the kind of banter you get in A New Hope, you get in The Force Awakens, and now you're getting in Rogue One. See, stormtroopers, they're not just dead-eyed monsters under there. They're dead-eyed monsters that have to kill time.
Number 18, gold leaders.
This was so cool.
Yeah, I got goosebumps when they said it. I was just like, oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this, again, it's just kind of closing that gap between these movies, and it's not something that they had to do. It's a little more fan servicey, but it's something that I felt was so appropriate when it actually happened that surprisingly how good it also looked, because it's very easy for things to not match up that well. They were really able to seamlessly integrate this stuff into the movie.
You might remember Gold Leader from the Battle of Yavin.
Yep.
Once you see it in this movie, you'll be like, oh man, okay, I get why everyone's like losing their mind over this.
Yeah.
Number 19, Red 5.
Red 5 is still alive, in this movie at least.
Yeah.
Red 5 you might associate with Luke Skywalker, but where did he get that title? Why was that number vacant? You'll find out in Rogue One. It was his call sign that he used, especially during the assault on the Death Star, but it wasn't always his. It's an inherited title.
Yes, and it's very sad. Now we know that those titles are now recycled.
Yeah,
sadly.
That actually makes, you know, war is hell. That Rogue One gets that across quite well and puts the other movies into sharp relief in a way.
Number 20, Imperial Motif.
Everyone knows some of the more famous songs that John Williams has done. There's a lot of, he uses leitmotif, which is a thing in music where you give characters their own specific theme. And, you know, the Imperial March is pretty iconic. You think about that when Darth Vader appears. But there's a lesser known theme called the Imperial Motif. It was featured in New Hope, and Michael Giacchino used it again for Darth Vader's first appearance in Rogue One. So you might, when it first comes in, you kind of like, oh, is this gonna be the Imperial March? No, not yet. It's still meant to evoke that sense of fear and dread, but also it's more just directly tied to Vader. Yeah,
and I think you need it. It's a part of Darth Vader's sort of theme, his presence, who he is. And if you didn't have that, it would feel a little less complete, I feel like. It's almost like if you had the opening of a Star Wars saga movie doesn't have the opening theme song, it just wouldn't fit. So to have that with Vader, I think it worked really well.
And Vader's unfortunate pun actually is a direct reference to the Chuck Palahniuk book of the same name, Choke. That's not true. What if?
And finally, number 21, Hammerhead Corvette.
This was maybe my favorite scene in the movie.
This was so cool.
It's just such a cool moment. Yeah, it's definitely a nod to Star Wars Rebels. It's featured when Princess Leia appears in A Princess on Lothal to deliver 3 of these Corvettes to the Rebellion.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, they're used them in the movie. Basically, like an intergalactic battering ram.
Yeah.
Just like, I didn't think that was possible. It makes sense now.
We've never seen that in a Star Wars movie, and it was awesome.
And it was so cool. I don't think I've seen that in like any sort of sci-fi movie that features like spacefaring dogfights, and that was just awesome. It was so cool to see. You know, basically, it's the equivalent of medieval warfare, but on a galactic scale. And when you think about it, Star Wars is space fantasy, so it makes sense they would sort of adapt these medieval weapons for a sci-fi trapping.
Yeah, and I think just closing this out, I think the one beautiful thing that I love about this is there's a lot of stuff that's a little more deep cut that maybe you have to watch Rebels to really get the references. But if you are interested and you hear about these things and it creates interest, you will go back and you will appreciate the whole kind of idea of all these Easter eggs a lot more, because now you'll be even deeper in this universe.
You want to know what else is awesome?
What?
You guys, that was unbelievable. That was so insightful. And of course, we also want to give a big thank you to Amy Ratcliffe, who helped a great deal with this.
Yes, Amy is maybe the biggest Star Wars fan I know. You've seen her writings on StarWars.com, on Nerdist. She hosts the Lattes with Leia podcast. Anywhere there is Star Wars, she is there. She was actually hosting some of the stuff on the red carpet at the premiere for Rogue One. So check her out at Amy_Geek on Twitter. She's wonderful.
Well, Dan, Adam, thank you guys so much. And thank you for being here with us. We want to know if you spotted any Easter eggs. So please let us know in the comments below. You can always tweet us at SJ News. And of course, you can always click here for more Screen Junkies news. Thanks for being with us.